Hey folks, welcome back to Game Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the game news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're doing an Aphelion review for the game. This just came out, I believe, on the 28th. We're going to go through the story, the mechanics, some of my favorite and worst parts about the game. We're going to go through the performance as well. We're going to go through a little bit of the funding, which I think affects what we see in the game. And kind of explains some of the issues. And then also we're going to go through the scores, on Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox, and then my own personal rating. So the story. Both characters, you have two characters, are on a mission to a possible habitable place on a new planet because Earth is dying. Something happens to the ship, we find out later, electromagnetic interference, and it crashes the ship onto the planet with only the two passengers. They end up getting separated. There's no equipment, just your suits, and personal effects are clues to guide the way. You play as both characters, Ari and Thomas. Ari, you're going to play roughly about 70%, and Thomas, you're going to play about 30%. And the story is pretty apparent early on why that is. The mechanics of the game. Generally speaking, they're simple, but they're not refined, and they help you get killed sometimes and or also waste your time, unfortunately. So the climbing and belaying mechanics for Ari, they're generally fine, but the guide rails, to help you not die in the game, the guide rails also hinder you too. There's also losing your grip just delays movement. There's not really a reason for it. There's certainly areas too that also help you get killed because your ledges that you're hanging onto on the wall face are breaking away. And as you slip or lose your grip, you don't have time to get away and you fall. And if you're not quick enough, you're unable to grab the next ledge right underneath you. That was especially one location in Chapter 10. That was or Chapter 9 or 10, that was pretty frustrating to deal with. Also, running away and avoiding obstacle mechanic is also pretty unrefined. You're definitely going to get killed trying to just... You almost have to do it perfectly, especially the further you get into the game. Especially Chapter 10, oh my word. Some objects are also bigger than they look, and so you get to experience this right in Chapter 1 and through the rest of the game, and pretty much every single runaway sequence you're going to have. You think you should be able to clear it, but your body is still hitting something or getting stuck on something, and you're unable to actually clear that, and so you die. Simple jumping is also frustrating in the game due to guide rails trying to stop you from falling off. The game is trying to protect you, but it also hinders your jump a lot of times when you're actually trying to jump a gap. When you're on a rope and you're swinging and you're jumping off, that mechanic is extremely forgiving. You can basically make any jump that you need. But off of the rope, you hit that guide rail a lot of the time, and it hinders your jump. So there was one jump, especially in Chapter 10, that I probably tried roughly a dozen times. And I almost quit because there wasn't any other way around it. There was no other way to scale another location or use my rope to kind of climb somewhere else. This was it. And the game is very linear this way. And so if you can't do it or you encounter a bug that prevents you from going the way that the game is designed for you to go, then yeah, you literally have a progression bug. If people are struggling with this, you really have to be perfectly aligned to actually make that jump. And there's some invisible walls and barriers and stuff that you have to deal with too. So I wouldn't be surprised if some people actually quit here being so close to the end of the game. Swinging and crawling are fine in the game. Those are perfectly fine. The balance beam is also okay, but it suddenly gets difficult at the very end of the beam. And you can be going perfectly fine, and then suddenly there's a massive push, lean to the left or the right. And sometimes you can't catch it in time, even though you're right at the end of the beam. I would just fall forward, but again, the game doesn't allow you to do that. And so, yeah, I've fallen off a couple of times. Also, initiating a drop down to a ledge doesn't always work. And so you partly have to get into the right position to start the sequence, to kind of get down on your knees and swing over the edge and grab on. And then also, when you're trying to initiate things, whether it's a computer, your frequency emitter, an item on a desk, you have to kind of be in the right position for quite a few of them. So you're going to spend time kind of moving around a chair or moving around a desk to try to get that camera alignment right and also be close enough to actually initiate. So I wish it was a little bit further away for that initiation so that it was an easier time to actually do it, because I don't want to waste time trying to work around a desk, trying to work around little crates and chairs and stuff to try to figure out the right position to actually do that. It's very frustrating. So on and off through the mechanics, you're going to struggle with them from chapters 1 through 11, the entire game. The story, too, is not great. We're going to get into that. And so if the gameplay is frustrating, it's just not a fun game. And it's not worth the MSRP, unfortunately. Best part of the game is chapter 5 and 6. The discovery, the mystery, also the puzzle in the game is really, really good. I had a lot of fun with that, and I definitely think people are going to get stuck on that too, because the game really holds your hand. It's very easy to know what to do, where to go, how to do it, because you don't have a lot of options to you, right? It's just process of elimination, and there's not really too much to think about. But yeah, there's one puzzle in particular that is, quote, a level beyond or a couple levels beyond. And so if you're just not used to that type of game, you're going to get stuck on that particular puzzle. And I can see that hindering some people for sure. And there's also really no help or guidance to this puzzle, so it really seems out of place because, and I don't know if that was kind of forgotten about or that was done on purpose or kind of snuck through the final product of the game or something, but like the whole game holds your hand until you get to this one particular puzzle in chapter 6, and people may not exactly know what to do. So, and truly, I wish the rest of the game was actually taken with this level of care and creativity on this one particular puzzle, because I think the game could really be something a lot more than what it is, than just kind of stuff cobbled together. And again, I don't know how big the team is, but the team does seem pretty small because they have multiple projects that they're working on, and this was just one of them. The voice acting is pretty good in the game. The music of violin and cellos, I think, work really good with a lot of the emotional structure that you're trying to garner from the player. The problem is that I don't overly care about any of the characters in the game because we read and hear about too much of what happened and not enough about the actual experiences to connect. So we're not really experiencing as much as we are kind of watching. And when I'm playing a video game, I want to play the experience. I don't want to watch the experience necessarily. So it's harder to connect that way, and so that's why I don't overly care. Because there's already stuff that's happened that I'm not privy to, or I find out later, or I kind of have to make those connections. And then some other stuff, the game is just like, hey, we're going to catch you up real fast of why this is important and why you're supposed to care. And I don't overly care because the game's not taking the time to actually organically grow that through the story or the gameplay experience. So that's why I don't overly care about any of the characters. The performance of the game. The game is built in Unreal Engine 5, so of course we have some issues. But we have texture pop-in and cutscenes. Sometimes it's seconds of pop-in during the first several seconds, which feels like a long time because you'll see like 3 or 4 levels or layers showing up into the frame, which is pretty distracting. It's also hard to enjoy the vistas when the shaders are jumping all over the place. So there's one shader vista in particular that is, I believe it's at the end of chapter 1 or the end of chapter 2. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, you're looking over the vista, and the initial part that's designed looks great. Okay? And generally, the vistas are pretty good. That is one aspect I do like about the game. But when you look out further, the entire Arctic shelf is just jumping and bouncing with these shaders all over the place. And it's just kind of hilarious, actually. It's just kind of funny to look at that. So yeah, it just really kind of takes you out of the game a little bit. You still have ghosting with objects when they actually move fast enough. There's really nothing that moves overly fast in the game to begin with. So this is a rare issue. But Unreal Engine 5 is known for their ghosting problem, and yeah, that is still here in this game. You also are going to play pretty much at 30 frames per second. It is consistent most of the time, which is nice, but there are going to be some areas like those vistas where you're going to be jumping down to what looks like 20 frames per second or even less. So one of the good aspects of the game is still hindered and marred by shaders and then trying to render everything in at one time and just the texture pop in. So yeah, the one good aspect of the game when it works looks great, but when you're moving your camera, the texture pop-in is coming in, and you're stuck at 30 frames, and now you're going down to what looks like 20 or worse. It's just not good, right? It's just not good. And it could be good, but unfortunately it's not. There's also small animation issues. There's also like pretty severe, sometimes lock-in animation, which is actually fairly common, especially when you're playing as Ari, because you're rock climbing, you're jumping, you're trying to grab onto ledges and stuff when you're swinging and whatever. So yeah, that is definitely part of an issue. Also, when you're engaging with some of the stuff on a computer or a desk, you'll kind of like boop, your character will kind of just move into place. And yeah, come on, guys, we're in 2026 now. Sometimes the game is gracious enough and kind of phase locks you into your jump. So again, like I said before, like when you're swinging and jumping to locations or whatever, you do see that a lot. You will just overwhelmingly easily, the game will kind of break for you and just get you to your jump, which is nice. And then other times you're going to be getting screwed over because of the guide rails with not wanting you, the game not wanting you to die. So this isn't the worst game that I've seen in Unreal Engine 5, but the game is also very simple. So I'm not wowed by much in the game, and then there's still these performance issues. And yeah, we shouldn't have these issues or limitations with the performance. And it just kind of shows the lack of expertise or experience with the team that's building the game in Unreal Engine. Or maybe, too, they just didn't have the time, but they are technically their own publisher. So, I don't know. Some just doesn't quite add up there. The game could have used more time. I also, too, would not be surprised if there were actually government grants to help actually fund this game, and those usually have specific requirements, and I wouldn't be surprised if these government grants were focused on ESG or climate change, of course, because that is like the overall arching narrative of the whole game and story. We do know that Don't Nod does actually take government grants, and yeah, they usually have these parameters, but again, that's not always overly public all the time. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually the case. And so part of the issue that I have with this is that instead of passion, there's parameters, and then you have to perform within those parameters. And then, yeah, the passion and the experience or the creativity doesn't really shine through like it could. Because you have to do something you don't necessarily maybe want to do, or would rather focus on something else, but maybe you don't have time to build that or whatever because you have these parameters from these government grants that you're taking. So that kind of sucks. Taking a look at the scores, we have Steam here. Again, we're roughly at a 62, and it has been going up a little bit. We're at a 65.7. But again, there are not a lot of people that actually played or bought the game. 4 days ago was the highest peak that we had was for launch day at 219, which is really atrocious. And then when we're taking a look at price history, it's actually still on sale. So I want to clarify, it was on sale. I didn't check Steam, but it was on sale on Xbox as a pre-order. And then that sale continued through launch. And I still think we have about a week left for that to actually finish on Xbox. When we take a look at PlayStation, there is no sale right now. It has a 4.1, and it has 176 reviews for launch out of 90 million players that have a PlayStation 5. That's kind of insane. That's not a lot. Also, Xbox, there's roughly 30 or 40 million that have a Series X and S. And again, we only have about 168 reviews, and this is roughly at a 2.8 at a 5. So the people that liked it are PlayStation, which I would kind of expect because they're used to these types of games. Okay, The Last of Us would be a great example of that. Also, God of War. Xbox players and Steam are not overly excited about this game. And yeah, the sales are definitely just not there, I think, with maybe what they need. How much money they need to clear, I think the game definitely costs probably a few tens of millions to make and manufacture. Maybe 10 million as a max. I don't know. I don't overly know too much about the studio, but they are independent. Their overhead is fairly low, but we do know they have roughly an estimate of 300 employees, but they are also working on multiple projects, and the game is $35. It's not meant to be this big grandiose type of thing, right? And yeah, we would expect also to have some performance issues, which we definitely have those. So I don't know if this game's going to be profitable. I think that's kind of a wait and see. And yeah, we'll have to see actually what happens with Don't Nod. My own personal score is a 4 out of 10. And the reason is because overall the game is boring and bland with the story, to the characters, generally speaking, and also to the gameplay. There are some things in some areas that really shine in the game, which is wonderful. But those are few and far between. When we have the frustrations and also the performance issues, those also do not help with the game. There's also no real challenge with the game except for that one particular puzzle that I was talking about earlier, which is also going to be a frustration and a nuisance for other people that have kind of been enjoying the challenge of the game so far. And then suddenly it's going to kick up a notch, so that's not necessarily great either. There's also no replay value for the game. It's roughly 8 hours to beat, but then mechanics also pad the time. So the game is also restrictive on what you can do and when, like running. So if I actually want to progress faster, like through the station in chapter 5 and 6, then I need to be able to actually pull out my scanner so I can kind of jog through the complex. So what the hell? Like we're restricting what the player movements can do. Where I also have to wait too for the character that I'm currently playing to actually stop talking in order for me to interact with something else. So there is some game padding happening in the game, whether that's intentional or not. It's still game padding. There's also plot holes with the story. So you're jumping in a river at the end of chapter 10, which doesn't make any sense because every time you basically enter water at any other point in the game, you drown. And suddenly we're not drowning? Okay. Thomas also has a hole in his suit at the very beginning of the game and is unaffected, which is kind of hilarious. The O2 units also on the suits for Ari and Thomas are infinite, unless they're damaged, which again doesn't make any sense. Also, the station that you run into, it loses power at one point for no reason. It shouldn't lose power at all. It's completely separate from the station. It's on a little ridge that you're going to see if you play. And yeah, there's no reason the station should even lose power. But whatever. Here we are. Also, the microbes on the planet. Why isn't anyone dying from them? And the reason I bring up some of this stuff is because of an interview with Tech Raptor, is that they were talking about how they're grounded in science, which I just find hilarious because, again, you can't think about this stuff too hard. But to hear that it's grounded in science, I had to make a note of this. Because, yeah, some of the science I definitely think is there. I think they are definitely working on that. And, two, I think some of the devs, and what they were focusing on, I think they definitely worked hard on this project. But the project is not overly cohesive in really any particular part of the game, except for the music. When I'm trying to enjoy the vistas, I have performance problems. When I'm trying to actually play the game, I have frustrating mechanics and the guide rails trying to protect me and stuff while I'm trying to move through the world. Also, the stealth mechanics can also be frustrating, or even, too, completely almost unnecessary. The game overall also doesn't have any challenge, but then suddenly I have this one puzzle which really spikes the difficulty like a son of a bitch, and then I got to work through that, right? And some people are probably going to quit right there. So there's a lot of inconsistency with the entire game, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then, too, the story and the plot holes and me trying to care about the characters, none of this is really happening. And I'm not saying that... I'm not saying that well, I am saying it is a bad game. I'll just say it. It's a bad game. It's 4 out of 10. And I'm not the only one that thinks that, because when we're looking at Steam and we're looking at Xbox, those are low scores. Okay? The Xbox is roughly almost at a 60%. And then Steam is at a 65%. PlayStation guys are the only ones that like this right now, but then again, the review numbers are so low, the player counts are so low, and I bet in a week, if we look at PlayStation Time Tracker and we also take a look at Xbox, Xbox will probably have a bump because it's on Game Pass, but probably pretty quickly after that week, a lot of people are quitting. So taking a look at Steam achievements first, there's quite a few people that have, at least started the game, but we started having pretty heavy drop off just from completing chapter 1 to chapter 2. So we lost over 20% right there. And this is not a lot of time. Each chapter is basically 30 minutes, if that. Most of them are generally pretty short. So if you're basically playing an hour and a half, you should probably be done with chapter 2. Because again, I played roughly 8 hours with 11 chapters. So you can do the math there. So yeah, it does not take overly long. Some of them are longer than others, of course. Completing chapter 4. There's another pretty big drop off actually from chapter 3 to chapter 4. And a lot of people just did not make it that far. Again, that's like 2 hours into the game, or maybe 2.5 hours, and people just are not getting there. It's of course possible that they're going to come back, they're going to play something else, but tell me what else people are playing right now. There's not much in the month of May until we get to the end, and this is basically May 1st. So yeah, it's not overly great. The fact that people are ultimately going to get to the end, so far we've had roughly about 19%. And again, people that enjoyed the game, they just worked through the game, right? We don't have much fall off once we start getting to chapter 5. So when we're looking at Xbox for the achievements, roughly as of right now, and again, this is on Game Pass, so it's very accessible to tens of millions of players, okay? 56 right now. 56% has completed chapter 1. We then have 24.5% have completed chapter 2. So the drop off is insane. Chapter 3, 18.7. Chapter 4, completion, 11.6. Completing chapter 5 is 10%. So that's kind of like where people that wish to keep going are generally still going. So yeah, Steam had a little bit more resilience, but yeah, people were basically done after chapter 1 and we're just not going to finish. And again, these chapters are not overly difficult. There's not really a lot of challenge in the game. But this is pretty poor. Like, it does not take long to get through these chapters. And yeah, people are just probably tapping out more than anything else. Again, the player counts are low. The reviews counts are low. And then, yeah, my own review is a 4 out of 10. The only thing that's really good and kind of untouched is facial animations. They did really, really good at that. And then the music in the game. And everything else is kind of marred by something. And that's just kind of frustrating because I really want to like space games. And lately, this decade, I just haven't. But overall, that's kind of my review. So in my opinion, it's worth skipping. I think they're going to have trouble making money at this. And this is just my own personal opinion and also looking at the data that we have available. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll do reviews every so often. There's also various content every single week. You can like it, sub it, all that stuff. And if I earned it, go ahead and keep the video in the algo for me. I appreciate it all any way that you can, or if you wish to do all of them as well. If you want to continue to watch or see videos, you have to sub and turn the bell on for the notification. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to send them to you, which is kind of weird. Yeah, the algo is getting it's just certainly more aggressive at this point. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys on the next one.